the new finding from Hill-TV is really consistent with other things we've seen in regards feelings of personal satisfaction and happiness. We're in the midst of this pandemic, which doesn't seem, any signs of abating anytime soon. So I think, that's part of the story, certainly. But even I think if you look beyond that, right, even before March or February, when things really started to turn, I think there's been a sense that Americans' contentment and happiness has been on the wane. Now, COVID certainly had a lot to do with that. There's a study by NORC out of the University of Chicago that has been tracking happiness, self-reported happiness, for about 50 years, and they found it plummeting in the last few months, so in 2020. And so that's new, and that's, again, consistent with what Hill-TV found, this significant decline in self-reported happiness. And I think, there are some variations that are important. So women tend to be expressing less happiness than men. Interestingly, in your data, the people living in suburbs, right, a group that's politically very important, express the most increased unhappiness out of folks compared to folks living in urban and rural areas. So that's something that's certainly bears watching.
Prior to the coronavirus depression, politicians and media figures were deeply puzzled by an epidemic of deaths of despair from overdoses, from diseases of addiction, and suicide coming as they did against a backdrop of seeming economic health in the nation. GDP growth was up, unemployment was down, the stock market was rising. All the metrics that had been carefully selected to tell us about the state of America painted a happy picture, and yet people weren't happy at all. In fact, increasing numbers were so miserable that they were checking out of life altogether. Now, the Declaration of Independence, of course, mentions 3 inalienable rights: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. How is America doing at fostering that pursuit for its citizens? Well, a new study has some really revealing insights. In effect, as our society has come apart, proffering unimaginable luxuries to some and precarious toil to others, a happiness divide has also widened between classes. A study published last week called The Expanding Class Divide in Happiness in the United States from 1972 to 2016 shows that since that time in 1972, happiness for whites with no college has declined steadily, even as that for whites with college has increased. The happiness class divide has widened for all races, however, as black respondents with a college degree have experienced an increase in happiness that has not been matched by their non-college counterparts. The study also found that self-reported happiness consistently rose as income levels rose. Now, that is somewhat in contradiction to a prior study that showed that these income-related happiness gains topped out at an annual income of somewhere around $75,000. However, the study only tested income levels up to $108,000, so I wouldn't draw too much from that. The real takeaway here is that increasingly, inequality creates depression and misery.
In general, incumbents tend to do better when the voting public is happier and more content than when things are viewed as kind of out of control and there's sort of no end in sight to the challenges that people are facing. And I think when it comes to COVID-19, if you look at a lot of the early polling, people were giving Trump a lot of benefit of the doubt. He had a lot of room to maneuver on this to try to get it right. And I think even if he had just done kind of a scattershot, throw something against the wall to see what sticks approach, I think he'd be in a lot better shape than he is now politically, where he seems to have kind of washed his hands of it, sort of says, yeah, it's going to be what it is, and then it's going to be over at some point. And sort of give up the reins. And I think there was this desire for leadership at the federal level, and I think that's playing into a lot of where the election is now. That we really saw that COVID remains one of the most important issues for Americans heading into the election. Not that these other things like racial inequality, treatment of African Americans by the police. There's other things that folks care about, but COVID-19 is really kind of swamping everything else. And to the extent that his leadership is questioned on that, it's going to be really challenging for Trump to dig himself out of this hole.
I have sat in the Oval Office with both of the men who are running for president. I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously, that he might come to feel the weight of the office and discover some reverence for the democracy that had been placed in his care. But he never did. For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe.
The morning after the last election, I said, we owe Donald Trump an open mind and the chance to lead. I meant it. Every president deserves that. And Trump came in with so much set up for him: a strong economy, plans for managing crises, including a pandemic. Yes, we Democrats would have disagreed with him on many things, but if he had put his own interests and ego aside, seen the humanity in a child ripped from her parents at the border, or a protester calling for justice, or a family wiped out by natural disaster, that would have been a good thing for America and the world. I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president, because America needs a president right now.